The radio died mid-scream. 12 Rangers, one compound, 300 enemies closing in like wolves. Sergeant Cole Maddox pressed his back against shattered concrete, feeling the vibrations of incoming RPGs through the walls. This wasn't combat anymore. This was a slaughter countdown. Every exit covered, every angle fatal, the kind of trap you don't walk out of. But 3 miles away, through a high-powered scope cutting through desert heat shimmer, someone was watching. Someone they'd forgotten was even out there. Lena Vostad, lone sniper, silent, patient, invisible. One woman, one rifle, 12 lives hanging by a thread. She chambered around, exhaled slowly, and made a choice that would rewrite everything. Before we dive in, if you're here for the full story, stay until the end. Hit that like button, drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let's begin. The mission was supposed to be simple. Intelligence gathering, in and out, minimal contact, the kind of op they'd run 100 times before, in half a dozen forgotten corners of the world where wars had no names and victories had no parades. 12 Rangers. Alpha Team. Led by Sergeant Cole Maddox, a man built from equal parts tactical precision and stubborn refusal to lose people under his command. 38 years old, face like weathered leather, eyes that had seen too many funerals. They'd inserted at 0400 hours under a moonless sky, dropped 8 clicks from the target by helos that disappeared into the dark before their boots hit sand. The compound sat in a depression between rocky ridges, an old industrial site, half collapsed, forgotten by everyone except the arms dealers who'd been using it as a waypoint for weapons smuggling routes that fed 3 active conflict zones. Radio check, Maddox whispered into his comm. 11 voices confirmed, clean, professional. These weren't rookies. Corporal Banks, demolitions expert, could disarm a pressure plate blindfolded. Specialist Hayes, communications, never met an encrypted channel he couldn't crack. Private First Class Ortiz, medic, steady hands even when the world was on fire. And 9 others, each one a piece of a machine designed to operate in the spaces between governments and chaos. They moved like shadows across the desert floor, night vision painting the world in shades of green. The compound rose ahead, skeletal buildings, rusted catwalks, empty windows like dead eyes watching. Overwatch, we're approaching primary, Maddox transmitted. 3 miles northeast, on a ridge that offered a god's eye view of the valley, Lena Voss adjusted her position behind her rifle, a Barrett M82A1, 50 caliber. Effective range, 1,800 meters and change. In the right hands, it could reach further. She had the right hands. Copy that, Alpha. I have visual. Compound looks dead, no movement. Lena's voice was calm, flat. The kind of calm that came from being alone with your breathing for so long that everything else became background noise. 29 years old, 5'7", lean muscle and controlled intensity, hair pulled back tight, eyes the color of winter storms. She'd been in position since 0200, belly down in a hide site she'd spent 90 minutes constructing. Ghillie netting, natural camouflage, invisible from 3 feet away, let alone 3 miles. This was her element. The silence, the distance, the math. Overwatch. Maintain coverage on north and east approaches, Maddox said. We're going in. Roger. The team split. 6 through the main entrance, 6 around the south wall. Textbook. They drilled this kind of breach so many times it was muscle memory. Lena tracked them through her scope, watching heat signatures move through her field of view like ghosts. Everything about this felt wrong. Too quiet. Too empty. The kind of empty that wasn't natural. She keyed her mic. Alpha, I don't like this. Thermals showing cold spots in buildings 2 and 4. Could be shielded positions. Maddox paused at the entrance, hand raised. His team froze. How sure are you? 60%, but the pattern's off. This place should be hotter if it's abandoned. It's reading like someone wants it to look abandoned. Inside his helmet, Maddox's jaw tightened. He trusted Lena's instincts. They'd worked together for 18 months across 4 operations. She'd never been wrong about a cold read. Alpha Team, weapons tight. Expect contact. Overwatch, stay sharp. They entered. The compound interior was a maze of corrugated metal walls and broken machinery, rust and decay. Old oil stains on concrete. Maddox moved point, rifle up, scanning corners. Behind him, Banks covered left, Hayes right, Ortiz center. Nothing. Just wind through empty spaces and the creak of metal. They pushed deeper, room to room, hall to hall, standard, clear pattern. That's when Lena saw it. Through her scope, on the ridge opposite her position, 2 clicks southwest. A reflection. Just a flicker. Glass catching sunlight for a fraction of a second. Her heart rate didn't change, but her focus sharpened to a razor edge. She panned left. Another reflection. Then another. 5 positions. 7. 12. Alpha, you have observers on the south ridge, multiple positions. They're watching you. Maddox stopped. How many? At least 12 confirmed. Probably more I can't see. They see us? If they have thermals, yes. Maddox's mind raced. They were halfway into the compound. Exposed. If this was surveillance, they could abort. But if this was... The first RPG screamed out of Building 4. It missed Hayes by 3 feet and punched through a metal wall like paper, detonating in the room beyond with a sound that turned the world into ringing white noise. Contact! Contact! All positions! Gunfire erupted from everywhere at once. Windows, doorways, rooftops, 50, 60, 100 muzzle flashes lighting up the compound like a deadly constellation. The Rangers dove for cover as bullets chewed through metal and concrete, sparks flying, ricochets screaming. Lena's scope snapped to the rooftops. She counted enemies. Fast. Automatic weapons, RPG teams, coordinated fields of fire. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a kill box. Alpha, you're in a prepared ambush. Estimate 60-plus hostiles, building 2 through 7. Maddox slammed into cover behind a concrete barrier, rounds hammering the other side. His radio crackled with overlapping voices. Taking fire east side. Banks is hit. Need suppression north wall. They're everywhere. He keyed his mic, shouting over the chaos. Overwatch, we need fire support now. Lena was already moving. Her first target, rooftop, building 3. Machine gunner with a PKM, laying down a curtain of fire that had 2 Rangers pinned in a hallway with no exit. She controlled her breathing, in, out, heart rate dropping. The world narrowing to the reticle, the wind, the distance, 2,200 meters. Crosswind, left to right, 8 knots. Temperature, 94 degrees. Elevation angle, 12 degrees down. Her finger touched the trigger. Math became reality. The 50 cal round left the barrel at 2,800 feet per second. It crossed 3 miles of desert air in 2.1 seconds, dropped 18 inches, drifted 6 inches right. The machine gunner's chest exploded. He dropped backward off the roof, the PKM tumbling after him. The 2 Rangers in the hallway broke free, sprinting for better cover. Lena cycled the bolt, brass ejected, another round chambered. Second target, RPG team, building 6, preparing to fire into the room where Maddox was pinned. Breathe, calculate, squeeze. The round took the shooter in the shoulder, spinning him like a rag doll. The RPG fired wild, spiraling into the sky and detonating harmlessly over the desert. Third target, command position, building 4. Man with a radio, directing fire. He went down before he finished his sentence. Inside the compound, Maddox felt the shift. The overwhelming barrage fractured. Gaps appeared in the enemy fire. Someone was hitting them from outside, picking off key targets with surgical precision. Overwatch, was that you? Lena's voice came back, steady as stone. Confirmed. I have the high ground. Keep your heads down and let me work. Copy. Alpha team, listen up. We have sniper support. Hold positions and wait for openings. But holding wasn't going to be enough. They were surrounded. Ammunition wouldn't last forever, and the enemy was adapting. Lena saw it happening in real time. The fighters on the rooftop started moving, using smoke for cover, repositioning to angles she couldn't see. They'd figured out someone was hitting them from range, and they were adjusting. Smart. Organized. This wasn't a random militia. She took another shot. Another enemy down. But for every one she dropped, 2 more appeared. They were pouring into the compound from positions outside her line of sight. Tunnels, maybe. Or vehicles she couldn't track from her angle. Maddox's radio crackled again. Overwatch, we're getting flanked from the west. I count 30 new hostiles moving in. Lena panned her scope. He was right. A whole new wave using the buildings as cover, closing in like a noose. She started firing faster. Target. Breathe. Shoot. Cycle. Target. Breathe. Shoot. Rooftop gunner. Drop. Doorway shooter. Drop. RPG loader. Drop. But it wasn't enough. The math was brutal. One rifle. One shooter. Against an enemy force that was now pushing 200 fighters, all converging on 12 isolated rangers. Alpha, you need to break contact and move. You can't hold that position. Where? Maddox shouted back, bullets snapping past his head. We're boxed in. Lena scanned the compound. Every exit was covered. Every approach was a killing field. They were trapped in the center of a storm designed to annihilate them. Her mind raced. She needed a plan, something to shift the balance, something. And then her radio died. Not static. Not interference. Just nothing. She checked the battery. Full. Checked the frequency. Correct. Tried to transmit. Silence. Jammed. Someone had cut the link. 3 miles away, surrounded by an army, the Rangers were now completely alone. And Lena, the only person who could see the full battlefield, had no way to tell them what was coming next. She looked through her scope at the compound, at the tiny figures fighting for their lives in the dust and smoke, at the enemy forces regrouping for a final push. One woman, one rifle, no communication, against impossible odds. She made a decision. If she couldn't talk to them, she'd have to guide them with bullets. Bent. Maddox noticed it first. The radio went dead in the middle of Lena's transmission, her voice cutting off like someone had flipped a switch. Overwatch? Overwatch? Come in. Nothing. Damn it! He turned to Hayes. Check the comms. Are we being jammed? Hayes, crouched behind a metal drum, pulled out his scanner. His face went pale. Sir, we're black on all frequencies. Someone's running a broad-spectrum jammer. We're deaf. Maddox felt the weight of it settle in his chest. No communication meant no coordination, no support, no extraction. They were cut off. Another RPG detonated against the wall above them, raining concrete dust and shrapnel. Banks! It. Maddox shouted across the gap. Banks looked up from his position 30 feet away, blood running down his arm from a shrapnel wound. We're moving! On my mark! Banks nodded. He understood. They had to break out or die here. Maddox looked around at his team. 9 of them still mobile. Banks wounded. Ortiz treating a leg wound on Corporal Reeves. Hayes guarding their 6. The others spread across 3 different points of cover, pinned down by overlapping fields of fire. They needed a miracle. And then, like an answer from the sky, the machine gun on Building 7, the one that had been shredding their position for the last 2 minutes, suddenly went silent. The gunner collapsed, visible for just a second before disappearing from the rooftop. Maddox's eyes widened. Lena, still out there, still working. 10 seconds later, another enemy position went dark. Then another. She was hunting. Without comms, without coordination, she was systematically dismantling the kill box from 3 miles away. She's still with us, Maddox said to no one in particular. Then louder. Alpha team, sniper support is active. When positions go quiet, you move. Understand? Scattered acknowledgments came back. Lena, watching through her scope, saw them preparing to move. She couldn't hear them, couldn't coordinate, but she could read body language. She'd trained for this. Silent overwatch. Anticipation. Reading the battlefield like sheet music. She shifted her aim to the next priority target, a group of 4 fighters setting up a heavy machine gun in a second-floor window that would cut the Rangers to pieces if they tried to move. First shooter, center mass. Down. Second shooter, reaching for the gun. Down. Third shooter, turning to flee. Down. Fourth shooter, frozen panic. Down. The window went dark. Below, Maddox saw his opening. Move now! 3 Rangers broke from cover, sprinting across open ground toward a better position. Enemy fire chased them, bullets kicking up dust, but the volume was lighter now. Manageable. They made it. Lena allowed herself 1 second of satisfaction. Then she was back on the scope, hunting the next threat. But the enemy wasn't stupid. They'd figured out the pattern. Fighters started staying low, moving only when covered by smoke or walls. They began concentrating their forces on positions Lena couldn't see, the west side of the compound where buildings blocked her line of sight. She watched in frustration as 30, 40, 50 fighters assembled in her blind spot. They were preparing for a coordinated assault, a human wave that would overwhelm the Rangers through sheer numbers, and she couldn't stop it. She keyed her dead radio anyway, knowing they couldn't hear. "Maddox, they're massing on your west side. You've got 60 plus coming in hard. You need to move east now." Silence. She slammed her fist into the ground. Useless. Then she saw it. A technical. A pickup truck with a mounted machine gun, rolling into position on the south ridge, not inside the compound, outside, setting up for a flanking run. If that truck made it to the compound, it would tear through the Rangers' positions like paper. Lena shifted her aim. The truck was moving fast, bouncing over rough terrain. Moving target. 1,500 meters, wind gusting, hard shot. She tracked it, led it, controlled her breathing. The truck hit a bump, went airborne for a fraction of a second. She fired. The round punched through the driver's side windshield. The truck swerved violently, flipped, rolled 3 times, and exploded as the fuel tank ruptured. The machine gunner was thrown clear, engulfed in flames. Inside the compound, Maddox saw the explosion on the ridge. He didn't know what it meant, but he knew Lena was still fighting, still keeping them alive. "We're not dead yet," he muttered. Hayes looked at him. "Sir, what's the play?" Maddox scanned their situation. They were in a central room with 2 exits, one to the north, covered by enemy fire, one to the south, their blind spot, probably swarming with hostiles. They were out of options. "We fight," Maddox said simply. "We hold until extraction or until we run out of bullets. No surrender, no retreat. We make them pay for every inch." The team nodded. No arguments. They'd known the risks when they signed up. Ortiz finished bandaging Reeves's leg and tossed him a fresh magazine. "Welcome back to the party." Reeves grinned through the pain. "Wouldn't miss it." But Lena, watching from her ridge, saw what they couldn't. The enemy wasn't just attacking. They were herding, pushing the Rangers toward the southeast corner of the compound, toward a kill zone. She scanned that corner through her scope and her blood ran cold. IEDs, daisy-chained, hidden under debris, pressure triggered. If the Rangers moved that direction, they'd walk right into it. She had to stop them. But how? She couldn't communicate, couldn't warn them. Then an idea formed. She aimed at the ground 30 feet in front of the southeast exit, adjusted for ricochet, fired. The 50 cal round hit the concrete and sparked, kicking up a cloud of dust and sending a visible impact crater spreading across the ground. Inside, Maddox saw the impact, frowned. That wasn't a miss. Lena didn't miss by 30 feet. She was trying to tell him something. "Hold up," he shouted. "Nobody move southeast." Hayes looked confused. "Sir?" That was a warning shot. Overwatch just told us not to go that way. Banks, despite his wounded arm, managed a weak laugh. "She's talking to us with bullets. I love that woman." Maddox looked at the other exits. North was still hot with fire. West was their blind spot. East was another impact. This time on the ground to the north. Another warning. "Okay," Maddox said slowly. "Not north either. She's steering us." A third impact, this one to the west, but softer, deliberate, different. "That one wasn't a warning," Hayes said. "That was a marker." Maddox understood. "She's telling us to go west. She's clearing a path." As if in confirmation, gunfire erupted from the west, but not at them. At the enemy positions, Lena had shifted her fire, hammering the fighters massing in the blind spot, forcing them to scatter. "Alpha team, we move west on my mark. 3, 2, 1, go!" They moved as one. Fast, disciplined, covering each other. Lena's rifle sang above them, each shot precisely timed to suppress anyone who tried to block their path. Enemy down, enemy down, enemy down. The Rangers punched through the west wall and into an alley. Smoke hung thick in the air. Visibility was maybe 20 feet. Maddox pushed forward, rifle up, heart pounding. They were moving, finally moving. Maybe, just maybe, they could... The alley opened into a courtyard, and 50 fighters were waiting. Time seemed to stop. Maddox saw them all at once, rifles raised, RPGs loaded. A perfect ambush within an ambush. Someone in the enemy ranks shouted a command, every weapon trained on the Rangers. And Maddox knew this was it. This was where it ended. He raised his rifle anyway. If he was going to die, he'd die fighting. The enemy leader smiled. His finger started to tighten on the trigger, and then his head exploded. Lena's bullet arrived a fraction of a second before his command to fire, turning his skull into red mist. The fighters around him froze in shock. That 1 second of hesitation was all the Rangers needed. "Light them up!" Maddox roared. 12 rifles opened fire at point-blank range. The courtyard became a slaughterhouse. The Rangers moved like a single organism, covering, reloading, advancing, trained brutality unleashed in controlled bursts. Enemy fighters fell, scattered, broke. The Rangers pushed through, over bodies, through smoke, deaf to everything except the rhythm of combat. They breached the far wall and stumbled into open ground beyond the compound. Desert, empty, beautiful. "Run!" Maddox shouted. They ran. Behind them, the compound erupted with gunfire as the remaining enemy forces realized their targets were escaping. Bullets chased them across the sand, kicking up dust clouds. But Lena was faster. She tracked the rooftops. Any enemy who tried to get an angle on the fleeing Rangers found a 50 cal round waiting. She fired until her barrel glowed, until the enemy stopped trying. The Rangers made it 200 meters before collapsing behind a rocky outcrop, gasping for air, covered in dust and blood. Maddox did a head count. 12. All 12. Wounded, battered, but alive. He looked back at the compound. Smoke rising, bodies everywhere. The kind of fight you're not supposed to survive. And yet... "Sir," Hayes said quietly, "radio's back, jammers down." Maddox grabbed his radio. "Overwatch, this is Alpha. Do you copy?" For a long moment, nothing. Then, "I copy, Alpha. You guys okay?" Her voice, calm, like she'd just finished a routine drill. Maddox laughed. Actually laughed. The sound felt foreign in his throat. "We're alive. Thanks to you. Just doing my job." "That wasn't a job. That was..." He paused, searching for words. "I don't even know what that was." "It was enough," Lena said simply. In the distance, the sound of helicopter rotors echoed across the desert. Extraction, finally. Maddox looked at his team, at Banks, arm wrapped tight but grinning, at Ortiz, already treating wounds, at Hayes, still scanning for threats even though the fight was over. They were alive because one woman, 3 miles away, had refused to let them die. The helicopters touched down in a storm of dust and noise. The Rangers loaded up, one by one. Maddox was the last to board. He looked northeast toward the ridge where Lena had been positioned. He couldn't see her. She was already gone, vanished back into the desert like a ghost. But he knew she was out there, and he knew he'd never forget what she'd done. As the helicopter lifted off, banking away from the compound, Maddox closed his eyes. 12 Rangers, 1 sniper, impossible odds, and somehow, against everything, they'd all made it out. But the question burned in his mind as they flew toward safety. How many enemies had she killed? How many shots had she taken? How long had she fought alone while they were blind and surrounded? He'd ask her when they got back to base. But deep down, he already knew the answer wouldn't matter. What mattered was that when the world tried to kill his team, someone had been watching. Someone had cared enough to fight an army alone. Someone had stood in the gap. And that was the difference between death and survival. The helicopter disappeared into the pale morning sky, leaving behind a battlefield that would be picked over by scavengers and forgotten by history. But the 12 Rangers on that bird would never forget, and neither would the lone sniper who'd saved them all. The debrief room at Forward Operating Base Sentinel was cold despite the desert heat bleeding through the walls. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across metal folding chairs and a scarred conference table that had seen 1,000 operational reviews. Lena sat alone in the corner, still in her combat fatigues, Dust caked in the creases of her gear. She'd been back for 3 hours, cleaned her rifle, inventoried her remaining ammunition, filed her initial report. The routine kept her hands busy while her mind processed what had happened. 47 shots fired, 43 confirmed kills, 4 suppression rounds. The numbers played on repeat in her head, clinical and detached, the way she'd been trained to think about it. Not people, not lives, just math, just problems solved at distance. The door banged open and Colonel Marcus Harding strode in, followed by 2 captains she didn't recognize. Harding was 52, built like an artillery shell, compact, blunt, devastating when deployed. He'd been running operations in this sector for 18 months and had a reputation for expecting perfection and accepting nothing less. Voss? His voice carried the weight of command. She stood, came to attention. Sir. Sit down. He dropped a tablet on the table, screen showing aerial footage of the compound. We need to talk about what happened out there. The 2 captains flanked him, pulling out chairs. The one on the left, Captain Brennan, according to his name tape, had the look of someone who'd spent more time behind desks than in the field. The one on the right, Captain Torres, had a combat patch from the 75th Ranger Regiment. He was studying Lena with the kind of intensity that came from professional respect mixed with curiosity. Standard debrief, sir? Lena asked. Not exactly. Harding tapped the tablet, bringing up thermal imagery. This is satellite footage from 0600 to 0743 hours. The firefight. You see this? The screen showed heat signatures. The Rangers in the compound center, enemy forces surrounding them, and a single dot 3 miles away. Her position. Yes, sir. You were ordered to provide overwatch and intelligence, surveillance, long-range observation. Harding's finger jabbed at the screen. This shows you engaging multiple targets over a 40-minute period. That's not overwatch. That's active combat. Lena kept her expression neutral. The situation escalated, sir. Alpha Team was in immediate danger. Immediate danger? Brennan leaned forward, his voice sharp with bureaucratic skepticism. Sergeant, you made the decision to engage without authorization, without communication with command. You operated completely independently. The radio was jammed, sir. I had no communication with anyone. Exactly our point, Brennan continued. You had no situational awareness beyond your limited field of view. You couldn't coordinate. You couldn't verify targets. You could have hit our own people. Lena's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice level. I maintained positive identification on every target, sir. Range, wind, elevation, all calculated. I knew where Alpha Team was at all times. I would never fire without certainty. Torres spoke up for the first time, his tone less accusatory. How many hostiles did you engage? 47 shots fired, 43 confirmed kills, 4 suppression rounds. The room went quiet. Brennan blinked. 43 confirmed? How do you confirm kills at 3 miles without a spotter? I watched them fall, sir. If they don't get back up, they're confirmed. That's not protocol. Protocol doesn't account for being outnumbered 20-1 with no support, Lena cut in, then immediately regretted it. She wasn't the type to talk back. But the exhaustion was catching up with her, and the implication that she'd somehow acted recklessly was grinding against her nerves. Harding raised a hand, silencing Brennan. Continue, Sergeant. Walk me through your decision-making process. Lena took a breath, organizing her thoughts. At 0618, I observed Alpha Team entering the compound. At 0631, I detected enemy observers on the south ridge. I reported this. At 0637, the ambush was initiated. Multiple enemy positions with overlapping fields of fire. Alpha Team was pinned with no viable egress route. I made the assessment that without immediate intervention, they would be overrun within minutes. So you took it upon yourself to start shooting, Brennan said. I prioritized threats. Heavy weapons first, machine guns, RPG teams, then command and control. Anyone directing fire or coordinating movement. Then suppression of positions blocking Alpha's movement corridors. Torres was nodding slowly. You were conducting fire support without being asked. I was keeping 12 Rangers alive, sir. By killing 43 enemy combatants, Harding said, his tone unreadable. Alone. From 3 miles away. In combat conditions with limited visibility and no spotter verification. Yes, sir? Another silence. Then Harding leaned back in his chair, studying her. Sergeant Voss, do you understand why we're having this conversation? This isn't about whether you saved Alpha Team. You did. Maddox's report makes that clear. This is about chain of command, about operating within the bounds of your orders. With respect, sir, my orders were to provide overwatch and protection for Alpha Team. I interpreted that as doing whatever was necessary to keep them alive. Interpretation isn't your job, Brennan snapped. Following orders is. Lena's eyes flicked to him, cold and sharp. If I'd followed orders exactly as written, 12 Rangers would be dead right now, including Sergeant Maddox. I made a judgment call in the field. That's what snipers do. That's what commanders do, Brennan shot back. You're not a commander. You're a specialist weapon. You don't make strategic decisions. The words hit like a slap. Lena felt heat rising in her chest but forced it down. She'd heard this before. Different words, same message. Stay in your lane. Don't think. Just shoot when we tell you to shoot. Torres cleared his throat. For what it's worth, Colonel, I've reviewed the engagement timeline. Voss's fire pattern shows tactical sophistication. She wasn't just taking targets of opportunity. She was actively shaping the battlefield, creating lanes of movement, suppressing enemy reinforcements. That's advanced fire support. She's a sniper, not a goddamn airstrike, Brennan muttered. She performed like both, Torres countered. Harding held up a hand again. Enough. Voss, you're dismissed for now. Get some rest. We'll reconvene tomorrow at 800 for a full operational review. And Sergeant? Sir? Don't leave base. That's an order. She stood, saluted, and walked out. The hallway outside was empty and blessedly quiet. Lena leaned against the wall, eyes closed, feeling the tension drain out of her shoulders. She'd expected a debrief, expected questions, but the tone had been wrong. This wasn't a review. This was an investigation. Someone thought she'd screwed up, or worse, someone thought she was a problem. Footsteps approached. She opened her eyes to find Torres walking toward her. Sergeant Voss. Sir? He glanced back at the closed door, then lowered his voice. Off the record, that was impressive work out there. I've been running operations for 12 years. I've never seen a single shooter achieve that kind of effect. Just doing my job, sir. No, you went way beyond your job. He paused. How long have you been a sniper? 4 years, sir. And before that? Lena hesitated. Infantry, Standard Rifle Company. Uh-huh. Torres didn't look convinced. You move through target priority like someone who's been doing this a lot longer than 4 years. Where'd you train? Fort Benning, sniper school, top of my class. I'm sure you were. He studied her for a moment longer. Look, between us, Brennan's an ass, but he's not wrong about the chain of command issue. You made command-level decisions out there. That's going to raise flags. People are going to ask questions. What kind of questions? The kind you probably don't want to answer. Torres glanced around again. My advice? Keep your head down. Don't give them reasons to dig into your background. And for the love of... Next time, maybe don't kill half an army by yourself. It makes the rest of us look bad. He walked away before she could respond. Lena stood there, processing. Background. He'd said background like there was something to find, like he already suspected something. She pushed off the wall and headed toward the barracks, mind racing. The barracks were quiet at 1400 hours. Most personnel were either on duty or at the mess. Lena had a small private room, one of the few perks of being a designated marksman. She locked the door behind her, dropped her gear, and sat on the edge of the narrow cot. Her hands were shaking. Not from fear, from the adrenaline finally wearing off, leaving behind the crash. She'd been running on fumes and focus for the last 8 hours, and now that the mission was over, the mission review was done, her body was demanding payment for all that borrowed energy. She lay back, staring at the ceiling. Tried to sleep. Couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the scope view, the compound, the targets, the math of death playing out in wind calculations and bullet drop. 43 people. 43 human beings who'd woken up that morning and made choices that led them to that place, at that time, on the wrong end of her rifle. She'd been trained not to think about it. Trained to compartmentalize. Enemy combatants. Hostile forces. Targets. Not people, but in the quiet, in the dark. The compartments leaked. A knock on the door jolted her upright. "Voss? You in there?" Maddox's voice. She opened the door. He stood there looking like he'd been through a wood chipper, fresh bandages on his arms, bruises darkening on his face, uniform swapped for clean fatigues, but still carrying the weight of combat in his posture. "Sergeant, can I come in?" She stepped aside. He entered, glanced around the sparse room, then turned to face her. "I heard about the debrief," he said. "Heard Brennan gave you hell." "It's fine." "It's not fine. You saved my team, all of us. And they're treating you like you did something wrong." Lena shrugged. "I operated outside my orders. Technically, they're right. Technically, you're a hero." "I'm not a hero. I'm a sniper. I saw targets and I eliminated them." Maddox studied her, frowning. "You really believe that?" "It's what I'm trained to believe." "Bullshit." He sat down on the single chair without asking, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "I've worked with a lot of snipers, good ones, great ones. None of them could have done what you did today. That wasn't just training. That was something else." Lena didn't respond. 43 kills, Maddox continued, in 40 minutes, while we were running blind. You were fighting an entire battle by yourself, and we didn't even know half of it was happening. I was providing support. You were waging war." He shook his head. "When we got back and I saw the satellite footage, I couldn't believe it. The pattern of your shots, you weren't just reacting. You were orchestrating, moving us like chess pieces, clearing paths, creating opportunities." "That's the job." "No, the job is to observe and report. Maybe take a few high-value targets. What you did—" He trailed off, searching for words. "What you did was save 12 lives against odds that should have been impossible, and now they're investigating you for it." "They're doing their job too," Lena said quietly. "Their job is to support soldiers in the field, not second-guess them from an air-conditioned office." Maddox stood, started pacing. "I've already filed my report. Stated clearly that without your intervention, Alpha Team would have been wiped out. I'm recommending you for a commendation." "Don't." He stopped. "What?" "Don't recommend me for anything. It'll just make this worse." "Make what worse?" Lena turned away, looking at the wall. "The attention, the questions, the scrutiny." "You don't want recognition?" "I want to do my job and be left alone." Maddox was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. "You're running from something." She didn't answer. "I've seen it before," he continued. "Good soldiers who don't want anyone looking too close, who keep their heads down, who are too good at what they do but don't want anyone to notice." He paused. "What are you hiding, Voss?" "Nothing." "I don't believe you." She turned to face him, keeping her expression neutral. "Believe what you want, Sergeant. I'm just a sniper, that's all." "Nobody's just anything." "I am." They stared at each other. The silence stretched. Finally, Maddox sighed. "Fine. Keep your secrets, but you should know what you did today matters, to me, to my team. We're alive because of you. That's not nothing." "I know." "Do you?" He moved toward the door, paused with his hand on the frame. "Banks wants to buy you a drink. Hayes wants to know how you calculated wind drift at that range. Ortiz wants to shake your hand. They all want to thank you. You should let them." "Maybe later." "Later might not come. We're shipping out in 72 hours. New assignment. Different sector." He looked back at her. "This might be the only chance you get to let people see you as more than just a ghost on a ridge." After he left, Lena sat in the silence again. But this time, the compartments held. The mess hall at 1800 hours was controlled chaos. 200 personnel trying to eat before evening duty rotations, conversations blending into white noise, the smell of reconstituted food and strong coffee. Lena grabbed a tray and moved through the line, keeping her head down, avoiding eye contact. She'd learned early that invisibility was a survival skill. Don't be memorable. Don't be noticed. She found an empty table in the corner and sat with her back to the wall. Old habit from combat zones where exposure meant death. The food was tasteless, but she ate mechanically, refueling. "Mind if we sit?" She looked up. Three of Maddox's rangers stood there: Banks, Hayes, and Ortiz. Banks had his arm in a sling, but was grinning like he'd won the lottery. "It's a free country," Lena said. They sat down anyway. "Voss, right?" Banks extended his good hand. "Corporal James Banks, demo guy. Also the lucky bastard who almost got turned into pink mist about 6 times today until you started working magic." She shook his hand briefly. "Just doing my job." "Yeah, we keep hearing that." Hayes leaned forward, eyes bright with curiosity. "Question. How the hell do you calculate bullet drop at 3 miles in combat conditions? I've done sniper familiarization and the math alone takes like 30 seconds per shot." "Practice." "Practice," Hayes repeated flatly. "Right. So you're telling me you ran ballistic calculations for 47 shots, adjusted for wind, temperature, elevation angle, and target movement, all while under stress? And you just practiced?" Lena shrugged. Ortiz, the medic, was watching her with a different kind of intensity. Less curiosity, more assessment. "You were in position for what, 4 hours before the fight?" 5. "Alone?" "That's how Overwatch works. Most snipers work in pairs, spotter and shooter. I work alone." "Why?" The question hung there. Lena took a drink of water, buying time. Easier to stay hidden with one person, quieter, more mobile. "Or maybe you don't trust anyone else," Ortiz said quietly. The table went still. Lena met his eyes. "I trust people to do their jobs. I do mine." "Fair enough." Ortiz didn't look away. "But for what it's worth, you had our backs today. That means something. In my world, that means your family. We're not family. We're soldiers who happen to be in the same place at the same time." Banks laughed. "Ice cold, I love it." He turned to Hayes. $50 says she's got a kill count higher than everyone in this room combined." "I'm not taking that bet," Hayes muttered. "Smart man." Lena stood abruptly. "I need to go." "Wait," Ortiz started, but she was already walking away, tray abandoned, weaving through the crowded mess hall toward the exit. She made it outside before the walls started closing in. Leaned against the building, breathing hard, trying to calm the spike of anxiety that had come out of nowhere. Family. The word echoed in her head, unwelcome and sharp. She didn't have family, didn't want family. Family meant vulnerability, meant people who could be used against you, meant attachments that turned into liabilities. The door opened behind her. She didn't turn around. "You okay?" Ortiz's voice. "I'm fine." "You don't look fine." "I said I'm fine." He moved into her peripheral vision, hands in his pockets, posture non-threatening. "Look, I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable in there. We wanted to say thank you, that's all." "You already did." "No, we said words. There's a difference." He paused. "You saved 12 lives today. That's not something you just brush off with doing my job and walk away from." "Why not? That's exactly what it was." "Was it?" Ortiz turned to face her directly. "Because from where I was sitting, getting shot at from 6 directions, watching Banks take shrapnel, listening to Maddox try to coordinate a defense against impossible odds, it felt like a lot more than a job. It felt like someone gave a damn whether we lived or died." Lena finally looked at him. "I follow orders. Alpha Team needed support. I provided it. That's the extent of it." "You keep telling yourself that." He started to walk away, then stopped. "One more thing. I've been a combat medic for 8 years. I've seen a lot of soldiers, a lot of reactions to combat. And you know what I haven't seen? Someone who kills 43 people and shows 0 emotional response. No shakes, no 1,000-yard stare, no nightmares. Nothing." He tilted his head. "That's not normal, Voss. That's training. Serious training. The kind that makes me wonder who you were before you showed up here as just a sniper." He left her standing there. The desert night was settling in, temperature dropping fast, stars beginning to pierce through the darkening sky. Lena stared at the horizon, Ortiz's words circling in her mind. He was right. She should be feeling more. The shakes, the guilt, the weight of taking lives. She'd seen other soldiers break down after their first kill, let alone their 40th. But she felt nothing. Just the calm. Just the certainty that she'd done what needed to be done. And that scared her more than any firefight, because it meant the training had worked. It meant they'd succeeded in turning her into exactly what they'd wanted. A weapon without hesitation, without remorse, without the weakness of human emotion. She pushed off the wall and started walking toward the perimeter, away from the lights and noise of the base. She needed space, needed silence. The guard at the gate nodded as she passed. "Evening, Sergeant." "Evening. Heard what you did today. Hell of a thing." She didn't respond, just kept walking into the darkness beyond the fence line. Not far, just enough to breathe, to think. The desert stretched endlessly in every direction, cold and indifferent. She'd always felt comfortable in places like this. Empty places. No people, no complications. Just the wind and the stars and the silence. She sat on a rock outcropping, pulled out her rifle maintenance kit, and started field stripping her sidearm. Muscle memory. Comforting routine. Disassemble, clean, inspect, reassemble. Her hands moved automatically while her mind wandered. 4 years. 4 years since she'd walked into that recruiting office and signed papers that would erase her old life. 4 years of becoming someone new, someone useful, someone who could make a difference, someone who could kill without feeling. The sound of footsteps on sand made her look up. Colonel Harding emerged from the darkness, alone, hands clasped behind his back. "Sergeant Voss." She stood. "Sir." "At ease," he gestured to the rock. "May I?" "It's your base, sir." He sat, groaning slightly. "Getting too old for this. Combat commands are for young officers with something to prove." He looked out at the desert. "I used to come out here when I needed to think, before the base expanded and this became outside the wire, back when it was just a FOB with 20 people and a prayer." Lena remained standing, weapon half assembled in her hands. "I read your full file tonight," Harding said. "Not just your military record, the whole thing. Everything before you enlisted." Her blood went cold. "Sir?" "Relax. I'm not here to interrogate you. I'm here because I've been doing this job long enough to recognize when someone's running from something." He glanced up at her. "Or running to something." "I don't understand, sir." "Yes, you do." He pulled out a cigarette, lit it despite regulations, took a long drag. "Your background check came back clean. Too clean. No criminal record. No debt. No drama. Just a perfectly normal civilian who decided one day to join the military and happened to score off the charts on every marksmanship test." Another drag. "And now, 4 years later, you pull off a one-person rescue operation that military historians are going to be studying for decades." Lena said nothing. "Here's what I think," Harding continued. "I think you were someone else before you became Sergeant Lena Voss. Someone with training that didn't come from Fort Benning. Someone who knows how to disappear, how to reinvent, how to be exactly what's needed at exactly the right time." "With respect, sir, you're speculating." "I am. And I'm also choosing not to dig deeper." He stood, flicked the cigarette into the sand. "You want to know why?" "Why, sir?" "Because today you saved 12 good soldiers. Because your actions prevented what would have been a catastrophic loss for this unit. Because whatever you were before, right now you're one of mine. And I protect my people." He fixed her with a hard stare. "But I need to know one thing. Are you a danger to this unit? To anyone under my command?" "No, sir." "Will you follow orders?" "Yes, sir." "Even when those orders conflict with what you think is right?" Lena hesitated. Then, "I'll follow lawful orders, sir." Harding smiled grimly. "That's the right answer, the honest one." He started walking back toward the base, then paused. "Tomorrow's review is going to be rough. Brennan's pushing for disciplinary action. He thinks you're a cowboy, a liability. Torres thinks you're an asset we need to protect. I haven't decided yet." "What would convince you, sir?" "Convince me you can work as part of a team, that you can take orders without reinterpretation, that you're not going to go rogue every time the situation gets complicated." He looked back at her. "Can you do that?" "I can try, sir." "That'll have to be good enough." He walked a few more steps, then called back. "And Voss? Whatever you're hiding, keep it hidden. Some secrets are better left buried." He disappeared into the darkness. Lena stood alone again, finishing the reassembly of her weapon. Click, slide, lock, perfect mechanical precision. She holstered it and stared at the stars. Tomorrow would bring more questions, more scrutiny, more chances for her past to surface. But tonight, in the cold desert silence, she allowed herself one moment of truth. She wasn't Lena Voss. Lena Voss was a construct, a carefully built identity designed to give her a second chance. A way to use skills she'd acquired in another life, a darker life, for something that mattered. Before the military, before the name change, before the clean record and the perfect enlistment, she'd been someone else entirely. Someone who'd learned to kill in rooms without windows, in facilities that didn't exist, under the direction of people who traded in secrets and blood. Someone who'd walked away from that world and tried to bury it. But some skills don't fade. Some training runs too deep. And when 12 lives hung in the balance, muscle memory had taken over, and she'd become, just for a moment, who she used to be. The weapon she'd been designed to be. And now people were noticing. Now people were asking questions. And the careful walls she'd built around her new life were starting to crack. She turned and walked back toward the base, mind already planning contingencies. If Harding dug deeper, what would he find? If Brennan pushed hard enough, what records might surface? If someone with the right clearance and the wrong intentions started connecting dots? The mess hall lights glowed in the distance. Inside, soldiers were laughing, eating, living. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that the woman who'd saved Alpha Team was walking among them carrying secrets that could destroy careers. Or worse. Lena slipped through the gate, nodded to the guard, and headed back to her barracks. Tomorrow, she'd face the review board. Tomorrow, she'd answer more questions. Tomorrow, she'd keep lying about who she really was. But tonight, for just a few hours, she'd let herself remember the truth and wonder how long she could keep running from it. Sleep didn't come. Lena lay in the darkness of her barracks, eyes fixed on the ceiling, listening to the bass settle into its nocturnal rhythm. Generators humming, distant voices from the night watch, the occasional vehicle rolling past on patrol. Her mind kept circling back to Harding's words. Whatever you're hiding, keep it hidden. He knew. Maybe not the details, maybe not the full picture, but he knew enough to be dangerous, enough to ask the right questions to the right people. And if he did, if anyone started pulling on that thread, the whole carefully constructed lie of Lena Voss would unravel. She checked her watch. 0347 hours. The review board convened at 0800. 4 hours to prepare. 4 hours to build her defenses. 4 hours to... The alarm shrieked through the base. Not a drill. The pitch was wrong. Higher. More urgent. The kind of sound that meant imminent threat. Lena was on her feet before conscious thought caught up, grabbing her rifle, her gear, muscle memory dressing her in full combat kit in under 60 seconds. She burst out of her room into a hallway flooded with confused soldiers doing the same. "What's happening?" someone shouted. "Incoming attack!" "Where?" The intercom crackled to life. Colonel Harding's voice, clipped and tense. "All personnel to defensive positions. We have confirmed hostile forces approaching from the northwest. Approximately 200 fighters with vehicle support. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill." 200. Lena's blood went cold. Forward Operating Base Sentinel housed maybe 300 personnel total, but only a third were combat troops. The rest were support, logistics, medical, intelligence. And most of the combat personnel were exhausted from rotations, under-equipped for a sustained defense. This was bad. She ran toward the armory, joining the stream of soldiers scrambling to prepare. The base was erupting into controlled chaos. Officers shouting orders, squads forming up, weapons being distributed. But underneath the discipline, she could see the fear. Most of these people had never faced a direct assault on a fortified position. This was supposed to be a secure rear area. Supposed to be. Maddox appeared beside her, face grim. "Voss, you hear the numbers? 200. Vehicle support. It's the same group, the ones from the compound. They regrouped and they tracked us back here." His jaw clenched. "This is retaliation." The words hit like a physical blow. Retaliation. Because she'd killed 43 of them. Because she'd humiliated them. Because she'd made them look weak. Now they were coming for revenge. This isn't your fault, Maddox said, reading her expression. Isn't it? No, these bastards were always going to hit us eventually. You just gave them a reason to do it sooner. He checked his rifle. Come on. Harding wants all marksmen on the north wall. They ran together through the compound, boots pounding on gravel. The base was a standard military layout: perimeter wall, guard towers, central command building, barracks and support structures radiating outward. Defensible, but not against overwhelming force. The north wall was already crowded with soldiers taking positions. Harding stood at the center, binoculars raised, scanning the darkness beyond the floodlights. Sergeant Voss, Sergeant Maddox, over here. He didn't lower the binoculars. Voss, I need you in Tower 3 with a clear line of sight. Maddox, coordinate Alpha Team for rapid response. If they breach anywhere, you plug it. Sir, what's our total defensive strength? Maddox asked. 87 combat-ready personnel. Another 40 who can hold a rifle if necessary. We're outnumbered 2 to 1, possibly worse if they have reinforcements we haven't spotted. What about air support? Artillery. Requested, ETA 90 minutes minimum. We're on our own until then. Harding finally lowered the binoculars, his face carved from stone. We hold this base, or we die trying. No retreat, no surrender. Clear? Crystal, sir. Lena was already moving toward Tower 3, a 30-foot elevated position on the northwest corner. She climbed fast, reached the top, and immediately started setting up her rifle. The tower gave her a 360-degree view of the approaches. Perfect sniper nest. Through her scope, she could see them coming. Vehicles first. Technicals, pickup trucks with mounted machine guns. Maybe 15 of them, kicking up dust clouds as they raced across the desert floor. Behind them, dismounted fighters spreading out in a coordinated assault formation. They were a mile out, closing fast. Lena's radio crackled. All positions, hold fire until they're in effective range. Conserve ammunition. Make every shot count. She adjusted her scope, calculating. Wind, 12 knots west to east. Temperature dropping fast, maybe 60 degrees. Distance varying, but the lead vehicles were now at 1,500 meters and closing. Her heartbeat slowed. Her breathing steadied. The chaos of the base faded into background noise. This was familiar. This was where she belonged. The first technical hit the 1,000-meter mark. Open fire! Harding's voice boomed across the base. The north wall erupted. Automatic weapons fire from multiple positions, tracers cutting through the night like angry hornets. The lead technical took hits, swerved, kept coming. Machine gun fire answered from the vehicle, bullets hammering into the wall, sparking off metal, punching through sandbags. Lena ignored it all. She tracked the driver of the lead technical, controlled her breathing, squeezed. The 50 cal round punched through the windshield. The vehicle veered hard left, flipped, tumbled, and exploded in a ball of flame. One down. She cycled the bolt, acquired the second technical. Driver gone. The vehicle crashed into a ditch. 2 down. But more were coming, many more. The dismounted fighters were spreading out, using the terrain, advancing in bounds. Professional. Coordinated. These weren't random insurgents. This was a trained force. The battle devolved into chaos. Gunfire from every direction, RPGs streaking toward the base, detonating against walls, sending soldiers diving for cover. Mortars began falling inside the perimeter. They'd brought indirect fire support. Explosions ripped through buildings. Screams echoed in the darkness. Lena kept shooting, methodical, precise. Vehicle commanders, heavy weapons operators, anyone directing movement. Each shot calculated to cause maximum disruption. But it wasn't enough. The enemy reached the wall. Ladders went up. Grappling hooks caught the top edge. Breaching charges detonated against the gates. North gate breach! North gate breach! Maddox's voice cut through the chaos. Alpha Team, on me! Seal that breach! Lena watched through her scope as Maddox led his rangers toward the shattered gate. They hit the breach point with overwhelming violence. Grenades, automatic fire, close quarters brutality. Bodies fell. The enemy advance stalled, but only for a moment. More fighters poured through. Too many. The Rangers were being pushed back, forced to give ground, fighting for every inch. Lena shifted her aim to support them. Picked off enemies at the breach point, but the angle was wrong. She couldn't cover them effectively from the tower. She made a decision. grabbed her rifle and ran for the ladder, sliding down more than climbing, hitting the ground hard. Sprinted across the compound toward the breach, weaving through smoke and debris. An enemy fighter appeared from behind a building. She shot him from the hip without breaking stride. Kept running. Reached the breach point just as Maddox's line was about to collapse. She dropped to prone behind a concrete barrier, acquired targets, started firing. Not long-range precision anymore. Combat shooting. Fast. Aggressive. Enemy down. Enemy down. Enemy down. The pressure on Maddox's position eased. He glanced back, saw her, nodded. "Voss, we need to close this breach." "I'm working on it." But they weren't. The breach was widening, more enemy fighters flooding through, and the defenders were running out of ammunition, running out of people, running out of time. Then the south wall exploded, a massive detonation that shook the entire base, sending a mushroom cloud of fire and debris into the sky. Secondary breach. They'd hit 2 points simultaneously. Harding's voice on the radio, urgent. "South wall is gone. Repeat, south wall is gone. All reserve units to the south perimeter." But there were no reserve units. Everyone was already committed, already fighting, already dying. The base was being overrun. Lena saw it happening in real time. The math was brutal and simple. Too many enemies. Too few defenders. Too many breach points. Not enough ammunition. They were going to lose. In 10 minutes, maybe 15, the enemy would control the base. Everyone inside would be killed or captured. Everything would be lost. Unless. The thought crystallized in her mind with absolute clarity. She knew what she could do, what she'd been trained to do. But it would mean revealing everything, every skill, every technique, every secret she'd buried when she became Lena Voss. It would mean becoming who she used to be. The weapon. She looked at Maddox, fighting 3 feet away, blood running down his face from a shrapnel cut. At Banks, firing his rifle one-handed despite his wounded arm. At Hayes and Ortiz and all the others, giving everything they had. They were going to die, unless she stopped running from what she was. Lena stood up, walked calmly to the center of the breach point, fully exposed, while bullets snapped past her head. Maddox screamed, "Voss, get down!" She ignored him, raised her rifle, controlled her breathing, and became something else. The first 5 enemies died before anyone realized what was happening. Perfect headshots. Mechanical precision. No wasted movement. No hesitation. 5 more. 10. 15. She moved through the breach like water, flowing from position to position, each shot perfectly timed, perfectly placed. Not rushing, not panicking, just executing with cold, calculated efficiency. The enemy fighters at the breach point began to falter, confusion spreading. Who was this? How was one person doing this? Lena reloaded without looking, muscle memory so ingrained it was automatic, kept firing, bodies dropped. The human wave crashed against a single person and broke. The breach cleared. She turned and sprinted toward the south wall, where the fighting was even more intense. Didn't think about the bullets chasing her. Didn't think about the odds. Just ran. Reached the south breach and did it again. Target, shoot, move, target, shoot, move. A fighter with an RPG, aiming at the command building, dead before he could fire. A group trying to flank the defensive line. Dead. All of them. An enemy officer coordinating the assault. Dead. She was everywhere. Moving faster than should have been possible, shooting with accuracy that defied explanation. Not fighting like a soldier anymore, fighting like something designed specifically for this, for maximum lethality, for absolute efficiency. Someone in the enemy ranks shouted something in a language she didn't speak, but the tone was clear, fear. They'd come for revenge, they'd come to destroy the base, they'd brought overwhelming force, and they were being systematically dismantled by a single person. Lena felt it happening, the shift. The enemy momentum breaking. The assault losing cohesion, fighters starting to pull back, looking for escape routes rather than targets. She pressed harder, moved to higher ground, started taking long-range shots again, picking off vehicle crews, anyone trying to organize a retreat, anyone who looked like leadership. Harding's voice on the radio, stunned. "Who the hell is that? Who's at the south breach?" Maddox breathing hard. "It's Voss, sir." "One person?" "Yes, sir." Silence. Then, What the fuck? The enemy broke, not a tactical withdrawal, a rout, vehicles abandoning positions, fighters fleeing into the desert, complete collapse of discipline. Lena tracked them through her scope. Let them run. Focused instead on the ones still inside the perimeter. Eliminated them methodically. No mercy. No hesitation. Within 20 minutes, it was over. The base fell silent except for the crackle of fires and the moans of wounded. Smoke hung thick in the air. The north and south walls were shattered. Buildings were burning. Bodies, enemy and friendly, lay scattered across the compound. But they'd held. Against 200 attackers with vehicle support, with breaches on 2 walls, with overwhelming odds, they'd held. Because one person had refused to let them fall. Lena stood in the center of the south breach, rifle still raised, scanning for threats. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was controlled. No shakes, no adrenaline crash. Just cold, mechanical calm. Footsteps approached. She spun, rifle coming up. Whoa! Whoa! It's me! Maddox's hands raised. It's me! She lowered the weapon slowly. He stared at her. What are you? The question hung in the air between them. Other soldiers were gathering now. Harding, Torres, Brennan, Banks, Hayes, Ortiz, all of them staring at her with expressions that ranged from shock to fear to awe. Harding spoke first, his voice quiet. Sergeant Voss. Report. South breach is secure, sir. Enemy forces have retreated. Estimate hostile casualties at 120 plus. Base perimeter is compromised but defensible pending repairs. How many did you... He trailed off, couldn't finish the question. Lena understood what he was asking. I didn't count, sir. Bullshit, Brennan said, his voice shaking with something that might have been anger or terror. I watched you. I watched you kill at least 60 people in under 30 minutes. 60 by yourself. He took a step forward. That's not possible. That's not human. The word landed like a grenade. Human. Everyone went quiet. Lena met Brennan's eyes, saw the fear there, the recognition that he was looking at something he didn't understand. Something that didn't fit into his carefully organized worldview where soldiers were soldiers, and wars were fought by people who got tired, who got scared, who missed. I'm a soldier, Lena said quietly. I did what needed to be done. No. Harding's voice cut through. No, you didn't do what a soldier does. You did what... I don't even know what to call it. He moved closer, studying her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. I've been in combat for 30 years. I've seen every kind of fighter, special forces, elite units, people who've trained their entire lives for this. He shook his head. I've never seen anything like what you just did. Lena said nothing. Where did you train? Harding demanded. And don't tell me Fort Benning. Don't tell me standard military. What you just did requires years of conditioning, specialized programs, the kind of training that doesn't exist in official channels. The moment crystallized. She could lie, could deflect, could try to maintain the facade of Lena Voss, ordinary soldier, but they'd all seen, they all knew, the mask was gone. I can't tell you that, sir, she said finally. Can't or won't. Both. Harding's expression hardened. That's not good enough. Good. I have over 300 people on this base. I need to know if you're a threat. I'm not. Prove it. I just saved this base. No, you did something else. You executed a combat operation that shouldn't be possible for a single operator. You moved like you knew every enemy position before they took it. You shot like you had computer-assisted targeting. You fought like you've done this 1,000 times before. He paused. So I'll ask again. Where did you train? Who are you really? And what aren't you telling me? Lena looked around at the gathered soldiers, at their faces, seeing the shift from gratitude to suspicion, from relief to fear. They were afraid of her now, not because she'd failed them, because she'd succeeded too well. I was part of a program, she said quietly, before I enlisted, a private military research initiative that studied combat efficiency, advanced tactics, psychological conditioning for high-stress operations. The lies came easily now, built over years of practice. It was disbanded 5 years ago. Everyone involved signed non-disclosure agreements. That's all I can say. That's all you can say, Harding repeated flatly. Yes, sir. And we're just supposed to trust that? Supposed to believe you're on our side? I've given you no reason not to trust me. You've given me plenty of reasons, Brennan interjected. You operate outside orders. You make independent decisions. You have skills and training you've deliberately hidden from your command. How do we know you're not— Not what? Lena's voice went cold. A spy? A plant? An enemy agent? She looked at each of them in turn. I just killed over 60 hostile fighters to protect this base. If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead. All of you. The words fell like stones. No one spoke. Finally, Maddox stepped forward. Sir, permission to speak? Harding nodded. I've worked with Voss for 18 months. I've seen her in combat. I've trusted her with my life and the lives of my team. And today, twice now, she's proven that trust was earned. He glanced at Lena. I don't care where she trained. I don't care what program she was part of. What I care about is results, and her results speak for themselves. Her results are terrifying, Brennan said. She's a weapon we don't control. She's a soldier under my command, Harding corrected. And until she gives me reason to think otherwise, she's one of us. He fixed Lena with a hard stare. But Sergeant, understand this. I will be investigating. I will be asking questions. And if I find out you've lied about anything that could endanger this unit, there will be consequences. Clear? Crystal, sir. Good. Now get to medical and get checked out. Then report to my office at 1000 hours. We're going to have a very long conversation. He walked away. The crowd dispersed slowly, soldiers heading back to their posts to help with the wounded, to process what had just happened. Lena stood alone in the breach point, surrounded by bodies and debris and the smoke of burning vehicles. She'd saved them. Again. And in doing so, she'd exposed herself. The careful facade of normalcy was shattered. The questions would come. The investigations. The scrutiny. People would dig into her past, into her training, into the life she'd tried so hard to bury. And eventually, they'd find the truth. That before Lena Voss, before the clean record and the perfect enlistment, she'd been someone else. Someone with a different name. Someone who'd existed in the shadows of government black sites and classified programs where they turned people into weapons. Someone who'd volunteered for it. Who'd wanted to be more than human. Who'd paid the price in humanity itself. She'd walked away from that world, changed her identity, built a new life, tried to use those skills for something good. But you can't run forever. Eventually, the past catches up, and now it was catching up. Ortiz approached cautiously, medical kit in hand. Voss, you wounded? She looked down at herself, blood on her uniform. Some of it hers, grazes, cuts, nothing serious. Most of it not hers. I'm fine. Let me check anyway. He started examining her, professional and detached. You're lucky. Could have been a lot worse. I know. He worked in silence for a moment, cleaning a cut on her forearm. Then quietly, that thing you did, that performance, that wasn't luck. That was precision. It was necessary. It was terrifying. He met her eyes. I meant what I said before, about family, about having your back. But Voss, what I saw tonight, that wasn't family. That was something else, something I don't have words for. Lena pulled her arm away, the cut half cleaned. I saved your life. I know, and I'm grateful, but I'm also— He trailed off, searching for words. I'm also wondering what else you're capable of, what else you've been hiding, and whether the person I thought I knew even exists. He walked away before she could respond. Lena stood alone again, watching the sun start to rise over the damaged base, orange light spilling across the desert, illuminating the destruction, the bodies, the cost of survival. She'd won the battle, but she'd lost something else, the ability to hide, the protection of anonymity, the safety of being underestimated. Now everyone knew what she could do, and that knowledge would change everything. In the growing dawn light, Lena made her way to the armory to resupply. The building was mostly intact, though bullet holes decorated the walls. Inside, the quartermaster, a grizzled staff sergeant named Kowalski, looked up from his inventory. "Voss?" His tone was neutral, but his eyes carried weight. "Heard what you did." "Just following orders?" "Right." He didn't sound convinced. "What do you need?" "Ammunition, 5.56 and 50 cal, cleaning supplies. New optics if you have them. Mine took shrapnel." Kowalski pulled the supplies without comment, stacking them on the counter, then paused. "My nephew was on the south wall. He's 22, fresh out of basic. This was his first real firefight." Lena waited. "He's alive because of you, so thank you." The words felt strange, uncomfortable. She nodded and took her supplies. Outside, the base was transforming from battlefield to recovery zone. Medics moving between wounded, engineers assessing structural damage, soldiers collecting weapons from dead enemies. The grim machinery of aftermath. Lena walked through it all, invisible again despite everything. People gave her space, avoided eye contact. She was the soldier who'd saved them, and the unknown quantity they now feared. She made it to her barracks, dropped her gear, and sat on the cot. Her hands started shaking, not from fear, not from adrenaline, from the simple act of stopping, of allowing her body to acknowledge what she'd just done, what she'd revealed. She'd killed over 60 people in less than 30 minutes, moved through combat with mechanical efficiency, demonstrated capabilities that raised questions she couldn't answer. And tomorrow, today, in a few hours, she'd face Harding's interrogation. The careful lies she'd prepared might not be enough anymore. Not after this. Not after they'd seen proof that she was something more than a standard soldier. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in." Maddox entered, looking exhausted. He sat down heavily in the chair, didn't speak for a long moment. Finally, "Alpha Team wants to put you up for a Medal of Honor." Lena's stomach dropped. "No." "Voss? No, absolutely not. I don't want recognition. I don't want attention. I want to be left alone to do my job." "You saved this entire base. That deserves recognition." "It deserves silence." She looked at him hard. "If you nominate me for that medal, it brings investigators, media, questions about every operation I've been part of, background checks that go deeper than military records." She leaned forward. "That can't happen." Maddox studied her. "Why? What are you so afraid of them finding?" "The truth." "Which is?" She didn't answer. He sighed, rubbed his face. "I've been doing this a long time, Voss. I've worked with a lot of operators, special forces, black ops, people with clearances above my pay grade, and I can always tell when someone's running from something." He paused. "Whatever you're running from, it must be bad if you'd rather stay invisible than be recognized as a hero." "I'm not a hero." "You are to us." "Then you don't know what a hero is." The words came out harsher than intended. Maddox flinched slightly. "Maybe I don't," he said quietly, "but I know you saved my team twice. I know you fought alone against impossible odds and won. I know that whatever secrets you're carrying, they haven't stopped you from being on the right side." He stood to leave. "I'll tell the team to hold off on the recommendation. But Voss, eventually you're going to have to trust someone. You can't carry everything alone forever." After he left, Lena lay back on the cot, staring at the ceiling again. Trust someone. The words echoed in her mind, but trust meant vulnerability. Trust meant sharing secrets that could destroy her. Trust meant letting someone see the darkness she'd come from. And that was a risk she couldn't take. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The sun was fully up now, harsh light streaming through the window. In 3 hours, she'd face Harding. In 3 hours, she'd have to defend her actions, explain her capabilities, justify her existence. In 3 hours, the next battle would begin. And this one, she couldn't win with bullets. At 09:55 hours, Lena stood outside Colonel Harding's office, hand raised to knock, hesitating. Behind that door waited questions she couldn't fully answer, suspicions she couldn't entirely deny, a reckoning she'd been running from for 4 years. She knocked. "Enter." The office was cramped and functional, metal desk, filing cabinets, a map of the operational area covering one wall. Harding sat behind the desk, looking like he hadn't slept. Captain Torres stood to his left, and to Lena's surprise, a woman she didn't recognize occupied the chair in the corner. Mid-40s, civilian clothes, eyes that cataloged everything. "Sergeant Voss, have a seat." Harding gestured to the empty chair facing his desk. Lena sat, keeping her posture neutral, her expression unreadable. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen," Harding continued. "She's a behavioral psychologist contracted by the Department of Defense to evaluate soldiers returning from high-stress operations. She'll be observing this conversation." Dr. Chen nodded, but didn't speak. Lena's internal alarm bells started ringing. A psychologist meant they were looking for signs of instability, looking for reasons to pull her from duty, looking for cracks in the armor. "Let's start simple," Harding said. "Walk me through last night's engagement from your perspective. Every detail." Lena took a breath and began. Factual, clinical. The alarm, the assault, the decision to engage, the tactical priorities, the outcome. She left out the parts they couldn't understand, the way time had seemed to slow, the perfect clarity of muscle memory taking over, the cold absence of fear or hesitation. When she finished, Harding leaned back. "You make it sound routine. It was necessary." "Necessary," he repeated. "You killed 63 enemy combatants. We've counted the bodies. 63 confirmed kills in 28 minutes. That's a kill every 26 seconds. While moving, while under fire, while coordinating between two separate breach points." "I didn't count the time, sir." "No, you wouldn't have." He pulled out a tablet, swiped through images. "We also pulled security footage from tower cameras. You want to know what it shows?" Lena stayed silent. "It shows you moving through that breach point like you could see the future, anticipating enemy positions before they appeared, firing at targets before they were fully visible, operating with zero wasted motion." He set down the tablet. "It shows someone with training far beyond anything the U.S. military provides. I told you, private sector program, advanced tactics. Bullshit." Torres spoke for the first time. "I've worked with private military contractors. Blackwater, Triple Canopy, all of them. I've seen their best operators. You're not that. You're something else entirely." Dr. Chen finally spoke, her voice measured and professional. "Sergeant Voss, I'd like to ask you about your psychological state during the engagement. Did you experience fear?" "No." "Hesitation?" "No." "Doubt about your actions?" "No." "Any emotional response at all?" Lena met her eyes. "I felt focused, calm, like I was doing what I was designed to do." The phrasing was deliberate, a small truth hidden in careful words. Dr. Chen wrote something in her notebook. "Designed, interesting choice of words." Harding leaned forward. "Here's what I think, Voss. I think you were part of a government program. Something classified. Something that doesn't officially exist. I think they trained you to be exactly what we saw last night. A human weapon. And I think when that program ended, you tried to disappear into the regular military where nobody would ask questions." Lena's pulse quickened, but her expression didn't change. "That's speculation, sir." "Then correct me. Tell me what really happened." The silence stretched. Lena weighed her options. Full truth would mean immediate detention, investigation, possible prosecution for identity fraud. Continued lies would mean they'd keep digging until they found something. Partial truth might buy her time. She chose the middle path. "I was recruited out of college," she said quietly, "by people who said they worked for a Department of Defense research division. They were studying enhanced combat performance, how to push human capabilities beyond normal limits through specialized training, psychological conditioning, and intensive scenario work." "When?" 7 years ago." "What was the program called?" "I was never told an official name. We called it the Initiative." Dr. Chen's pen moved across the page. "How many people were in this program?" "I don't know. I only saw my cohort, 12 of us." "Where was it located?" "Multiple sites. We moved every few months. Somewhere in Colorado, then Nevada. Then somewhere I couldn't identify." Harding's expression was unreadable. "What kind of training?" Lena looked at her hands. "Everything. Marksmanship until we could shoot in our sleep. Hand-to-hand combat until reaction became instinct. Tactical analysis until we could read a battlefield like sheet music. Psychological conditioning to remove fear responses, hesitation, emotional interference. She paused. They wanted to create soldiers who could operate independently at maximum efficiency without the limitations normal people have. Normal people, Torres echoed. You don't consider yourself normal? No. The blunt honesty seemed to surprise them. What happened to the program? Harding asked. It was shut down after 3 years. Congressional oversight caught wind of it. Questions about ethics, about informed consent, about what happens when you train people to be weapons and then try to put them back into society. Lena's voice stayed flat. We were debriefed, signed non-disclosure agreements with teeth, given new identities if we wanted them, told to disappear. And you chose to enlist? I chose to use what they'd made me for something that mattered. The skills don't go away just because the program ended. I thought if I joined the regular military, I could apply them in a context that had rules, structure, purpose. Dr. Chen set down her pen. Sergeant, do you experience remorse for the people you've killed? No. Why not? Because they were trying to kill my people. Because eliminating them was the correct tactical decision. Because remorse doesn't change outcomes. That's not an answer. That's a rationalization. Lena looked at her directly. You asked if I feel remorse. I don't. I feel certainty. I feel like I made the right choice. If that makes me a monster in your eyes, that's your problem, not mine. The room went very quiet. Harding broke the silence. The problem, Sergeant, is that I have a soldier under my command who's demonstrably more dangerous than anyone else on this base, who's been lying about her background, who operates by her own judgment regardless of orders. And I need to decide what to do about that. What are the options, sir? Option 1. I recommend you for psychological evaluation and potential discharge on the grounds that you're unstable or unfit for duty. He held up a finger. Option 2. I report your background to higher command and let them decide whether to investigate this initiative program and everyone connected to it, which probably ends with you in a classified detention facility answering very uncomfortable questions. Second finger. Option 3. I accept that you're an asset I don't fully understand but can't afford to lose, and I find a way to keep you operational while managing the risks you represent. Third finger. Which one are you leaning towards, sir? I haven't decided yet. He looked at Torres. Captain, your assessment? Torres rubbed his jaw, thinking. From a tactical standpoint, Voss is the most effective combat operator I've ever seen. She's worth a full platoon in the right circumstances, but she's also a massive unknown. We don't know what other conditioning she received. We don't know if there are triggers or vulnerabilities we should be aware of. We don't know if she can actually follow orders when it matters, or if she'll always prioritize her own tactical judgment. Dr. Chen? The psychologist chose her words carefully. Sergeant Voss displays classic markers of someone who's undergone intensive behavioral conditioning. The absence of normal fear responses, the clinical detachment from violence, the self-identification as a tool rather than a person, these are concerning. However, I don't see evidence of psychosis or sociopathy. She's not killing for pleasure. She's operating according to a set of parameters that were programmed into her. The question is whether those parameters align with military discipline and command structure. Do they? Harding asked Lena directly. I follow lawful orders, sir. I always have. You follow them when they align with your tactical assessment, he corrected. When they don't, you improvise. That's not the same thing. Would you prefer I follow orders that get people killed? I'd prefer you trust your commanders to make those decisions. With respect, sir, commanders aren't the ones on the ground. They don't see what I see. They can't react the way I can. That's exactly the problem. Harding stood, walked to the window overlooking the damaged base. You think you know better. You think your training, your conditioning, your capabilities make you the best judge of every situation, and maybe you're right. Maybe you do know better. But the moment I accept that, I lose command of you. You become a free agent who happens to wear our uniform. Lena stood as well. I'm not asking for autonomy. I'm asking for trust. Trust that when I make split-second decisions in combat, I'm doing it to accomplish the mission and protect our people, not to undermine authority. Trust is earned through transparency and consistency. You've provided neither. I've provided results. At what cost? He turned to face her. Yesterday you saved this base. Last week you saved Alpha Team. Both times by operating beyond your mandate. Both times by revealing capabilities you'd hidden. That pattern tells me you're always holding something back, always keeping secrets. And I can't command someone I can't fully know. The words hit harder than Lena expected. Because he was right. She was always holding back. Always calculating how much to reveal versus how much to conceal. Always maintaining distance. What do you want from me, sir? I want the whole truth. Who you were before the initiative. Why you volunteered for it. What happened during those 3 years. And what you're really afraid of. Lena felt the walls closing in. Some of that information is classified above your clearance level, sir. Then I'll get my clearance upgraded. That could take months. I have time. The enemies at our gates don't. Harding smiled grimly. Now you're using tactical arguments to avoid personal disclosure. That's telling. A knock on the door interrupted them. An aide stuck his head in. Sir, you're needed in the operations center. Priority communication from CENTCOM. Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes. The aide disappeared. Harding turned back to Lena. We're going to continue this conversation, but not right now. In the meantime, you're confined to base. No operations, no independent action. You're effectively on administrative hold pending my decision on how to proceed. Understood? Yes, sir. Dismissed. Lena saluted and left, feeling the weight of Dr. Chen's analytical gaze following her out. The next 2 days were purgatory. Lena remained in her barracks, emerging only for meals and required check-ins. No duties. No responsibilities. Just waiting while Harding made his decision and the base rebuilt around her. She heard the whispers, saw the looks. The other soldiers didn't know what to make of her anymore. Some viewed her as a hero, others as a liability. Most just kept their distance, unsure which side to land on. Alpha Team tried to visit. She turned them away. On the 3rd day, Maddox forced his way in. We need to talk. I'm not supposed to have visitors. Since when do you follow rules? He closed the door, sat down uninvited. The base is falling apart, Voss. Half the combat personnel are demanding you be recognized for what you did. The other half want you court-martialed for operating outside the chain of command. Harding's getting pressure from both sides. That's not my problem. It is if they decide you're more trouble than you're worth. He leaned forward. I've been asking around, quiet inquiries, about this initiative program you mentioned. Lena's blood went cold. You shouldn't have done that. Yeah, well, I did. And you know what I found? Nothing. No congressional oversight hearings. No DoD research divisions with that profile. No classified programs shut down in the right time frame. He studied her face. Which means either it was buried so deep nobody can find it, or you were lying. I told you. Partial truth. You told Harding just enough to explain your skills without revealing what really happened. I get it. I've done the same thing when my own background got too complicated to explain. He paused. But Voss, if you want people to trust you, you need to give them something real, something they can verify, something that proves you're on their side. I saved the base. What more proof do you need? That proves you can fight, doesn't prove where your loyalties lie. The words stung because they echoed her own fears. Where did her loyalties lie? To the military she'd joined under false pretenses? To the training that had made her what she was? To some abstract concept of doing the right thing? I'm loyal to keeping people alive, she said finally. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Maddox stood. Then you better hope it's enough. Because Harding's making his decision today, and from what I hear, it's not looking good. After he left, Lena lay back on the cot and closed her eyes. She'd known this day would come eventually. Known that the careful construction of Lena Voss would crumble under scrutiny. Known that revealing her capabilities would trigger questions she couldn't answer. She just hadn't expected it to happen so soon. The door opened again without warning. Captain Torres stepped in, expression serious. On your feet, Sergeant. Colonel wants to see you. Now. The operations center was crowded. Harding sat at the head of a conference table, flanked by Torres and Dr. Chen. But there were others too. 2 officers Lena didn't recognize, wearing uniforms that indicated higher command. And in the corner, a man in civilian clothes with the bearing of someone who'd spent a career in intelligence work. This was an official review, possibly a tribunal. Sergeant Voss, please sit. Harding's tone was formal, professional. The warmth of their earlier conversations was gone. Lena sat. One of the unknown officers spoke first. I'm Colonel Judith Marks from J2 Intelligence Division. This is Lieutenant Colonel David Park from JAG. We've been reviewing your file and the reports of your recent actions. She slid a tablet across the table. We've also been in contact with certain agencies regarding the initiative program you described. Lena's heart rate accelerated, but her expression remained neutral. The program exists, Marks continued, or existed. It was buried under multiple layers of classification, but we found references. Congressional inquiries, budget allocations, and termination orders. She paused. What we didn't find was your name on any participant roster. The room temperature seemed to drop. The 12 individuals who went through that program are accounted for, Marks continued. 3 deceased, 5 relocated to civilian life under new identities and ongoing monitoring. 4 incorporated into special operations units under restricted duty. She looked at Lena directly. You're not any of them. Lena felt the trap closing. I used a different name during the program. What name? She couldn't answer, because the truth was worse than they imagined. The civilian in the corner finally spoke. Let me save us all some time. Sergeant Voss, or whatever your real name is, I'm Marcus Webb, Defense Intelligence Agency. I've spent the last 72 hours running every biometric marker we have on you through every database available. Facial recognition, fingerprints, DNA profile. And you know what came back? Lena waited. Nothing that predates your enlistment 4 years ago. You're a ghost. You didn't exist before you became Lena Voss. He stood, walked around the table. So here's what I think. I think you're right that you were trained by a program designed to create enhanced operators. But I don't think it was the initiative. I think it was something else, something darker, something that doesn't leave paper trails or congressional hearings. He stopped directly in front of her. I think you were trained by an organization that operates in the shadows, that creates weapons out of people and deploys them without oversight. And I think you walked away from that organization and tried to disappear. His eyes narrowed. Question is, did they let you go, or are you still theirs? The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Lena looked around the table. At Harding, conflicted. At Torres, uncertain. At Dr. Chen, analytical. At the JAG officer, ready to prosecute. At the intelligence officers, searching for threats. She made a choice. My name was Elena Volkov, she said quietly. I was born in Russia. Immigrated to the U.S. at age 12 with my mother. She was a defector, low-level FSB analyst who gave the CIA enough intelligence to warrant asylum. She paused. When I was 19, I was approached by people who said they worked for the government. They knew my background, knew my mother's history. They offered me a choice. Participate in a program that would train me to be useful to my adopted country, or live the rest of my life under suspicion as the daughter of a Russian spy. So you volunteered, Dr. Chen said softly. I was recruited. There's a difference. Lena's voice hardened. They spent 3 years breaking me down and rebuilding me, teaching me to shoot, to fight, to think tactically, to operate alone. They erased my emotional responses, my hesitations, my doubts. They turned me into exactly what you saw 2 nights ago. And then? Marks prompted. And then they tried to deploy me, wanted me to go back to Russia, to use my background as cover for intelligence operations, essentially turned me into the spy they'd always suspected my mother might be. She shook her head. I refused, said I'd signed up to protect American lives, not to become an asset in the intelligence games they played. They said I didn't have a choice. So you ran, Webb said. So I ran, changed my identity, buried Elena Volkov, became Lena Voss, enlisted in the regular military where I thought nobody would look for a Russian defector's daughter turned rogue operator. She met Webb's eyes. And I've been running ever since. The silence was absolute. Finally, Harding spoke. Harding, why didn't you tell me this before? Because the moment I admit to being a foreign national with concealed background, I become a security risk. Because I knew you'd have to report it. Because I was afraid. The last word came out bitter. They conditioned me to not feel fear in combat, but they couldn't condition away the fear of being sent back to the people who made me. Park, the JAG officer, cleared his throat. Sergeant, Ms. Volkov, do you understand the legal implications of what you've just confessed? Identity fraud, falsifying enlistment documents, possibly espionage depending on what activities you engaged in during your training. I understand. You could face court-martial, imprisonment, and deportation. I know. Then why tell us now? Lena looked at each of them in turn. Because I'm tired of running. Because you were going to find out anyway. And because... She took a breath. Because I'd rather face consequences for telling the truth than continue living a lie. Dr. Chen wrote something, then set down her pen. Elena, may I call you that? I prefer Lena. That's who I am now. Lena, then, do you feel any loyalty to Russia? No, I was 12 when I left. I barely remember it. To the program that trained you? I hate them for what they did to me. To the United States military? Lena paused. I feel loyalty to the people I serve with, to Maddox and his team, to the soldiers on this base who were willing to die defending it, to the concept of protecting those who can't protect themselves. She looked at Harding. Whether that counts as loyalty to the military, I don't know. But it's real. Marks leaned back. This is above my authority level. We'll need to escalate this to INSCOM and possibly DoD leadership. In the meantime, Sergeant Voss remains confined to base under observation. With respect, ma'am, Torres interjected, we're still in an active combat zone. We lost 15% of our combat strength in the recent attack. We need every capable fighter we have. Captain, she's a potential security risk. She's also the reason this base is still standing. Torres stood. I watched the footage. I saw what she did. Whatever her background, whatever her training, she fought for us. She bled for us. And she's sitting here confessing everything instead of continuing to hide. He looked at Harding. Sir, recommendation, we keep her operational under close supervision while higher command makes their decision. We can't afford to bench our most effective operator based on hypotheticals. Harding considered. What's your assessment, Dr. Chen? Lena shows no signs of deception in her current statements. Her physiological markers, breathing, eye contact, body language, all indicate she's telling what she believes is the truth. Whether there are additional layers we haven't uncovered, I can't say. But I don't believe she's an active threat to this unit. Webb crossed his arms. My agency will want to interview her extensively. If what she's saying is true, we need to identify which program trained her and shut it down. If it still exists, Lena said quietly. You think it doesn't? I think organizations like that don't get shut down. They get reorganized, rebranded. They find new funding streams and new recruits. I was one of many. There are probably others out there right now wearing different faces, serving different purposes. The words landed like stones. Mark stood. This conversation is classified at the highest level. Nothing discussed here leaves this room. We'll compile our reports and submit them up the chain. In the meantime, Sergeant Voss remains under Colonel Harding's direct supervision. She looked at Lena. You've been honest today. I appreciate that. But understand, honesty doesn't erase consequences. You'll likely face significant penalties for what you've done. I understand, ma'am. Good. Dismissed. Lena stood, saluted, and left the room. In the hallway, her legs nearly gave out. She leaned against the wall, breathing hard, processing what had just happened. She'd told them, not everything, but enough. Enough that they could verify. Enough that they could understand. Enough that she might finally stop running. Footsteps approached. Harding emerged from the operations center alone. Walk with me, Voss. They moved through the base in silence, past repair crews fixing damage, past soldiers on patrol, past the scars of battle slowly being erased. Finally, Harding spoke. That took courage. What you did in there. Or stupidity. Both, probably. He glanced at her. I've been commanding soldiers for 3 decades. I've seen every kind, brave, cowardly, skilled, incompetent, loyal, treacherous. You're the first one I genuinely couldn't categorize. Is that good or bad? Haven't decided yet. They reached the north wall overlooking the desert. My gut says you're exactly what you claim, someone trying to escape a past they didn't choose and do something meaningful with skills they didn't ask for. My head says you're a massive security risk that I should immediately remove from my command. Which one wins? Harding was quiet for a long moment. My gut, for now. He turned to face her. But understand this, Lena, or Elena, or whoever you really are. I'm trusting you. Against my better judgment, against regulations, probably against my career interests, I'm choosing to believe you're on our side. Don't make me regret it. I won't, sir. You better not. Because if you do, I'll personally ensure you face every consequence available. He paused. But if you prove me right, if you continue to fight for this unit the way you have been, I'll go to bat for you. I'll argue for leniency. I'll make the case that whatever crimes you committed in creating a new identity were justified by the circumstances. Why? Because you saved my base. Because you saved good soldiers who have families waiting for them. Because despite everything, you've never given me reason to doubt your commitment to the mission. He extended his hand. And because sometimes you have to trust your gut about people. Lena shook his hand. Get some rest, Harding said. Tomorrow you're back on duty. We've got patrols to run and threats to monitor, and I need my best sniper operational. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet. This isn't over. Higher command will make the final call, but until they do, you're mine, and I protect my people. He walked away, leaving Lena alone on the wall. She looked out at the desert, at the vast empty space that had been her refuge and her prison. For 4 years she'd hidden there, in plain sight, trying to outrun a past that had finally caught up. But maybe running wasn't the answer anymore. Maybe it was time to stand and face whatever came next. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, beautiful and harsh in equal measure, like everything else about this place. Lena took a deep breath and headed back to her barracks. Tomorrow she'd be a soldier again. Tomorrow she'd do her job. And tomorrow, for the first time in 4 years, she wouldn't have to pretend to be someone she wasn't. She'd just be Lena, complicated, dangerous, useful, but finally, honestly herself. And that was enough. 3 weeks passed in a strange kind of limbo. Lena returned to duty as Harding had promised, running patrols, providing overwatch, training new personnel in advanced marksmanship. The work was familiar, grounding, a reminder that she could still be useful even with her secrets exposed. But everything had changed. The other soldiers treated her differently now, some with respect bordering on reverence, the ones who'd been saved by her actions. Others with cautious distance, the ones who saw her as something other than human, and a few with outright suspicion, those who believed foreign-born soldiers could never truly be trusted. She felt the weight of their stares during meals, during briefings, during the quiet moments between operations. The invisible wall she'd built around herself had been replaced by a different kind of isolation, the kind that came from being known but not understood. On the 22nd day after her confession, Harding summoned her to his office. She entered to find him sitting with 2 new faces, a Navy captain and a civilian woman in a dark suit who radiated authority. Sergeant Voss, this is Captain James Reeves from Naval Intelligence and Director Patricia Hammond from an organization I can't name. Harding's expression was unreadable. They've come with a decision regarding your case. Lena's stomach tightened. This was it. The judgment she'd been waiting for. Director Hammond spoke first, her voice crisp and professional. Ms. Volkov, I'll use your birth name for clarity. We've spent the past 3 weeks investigating your claims. We've verified most of your story, your mother's defection, your recruitment into a program that operated under multiple cover names, your subsequent disappearance and identity change. And Lena's voice was steady despite the fear coiling in her chest. And we've concluded that you were, in fact, a victim of an illegal operation that violated numerous laws regarding informed consent, treatment of minors, and domestic intelligence activities. Hammond pulled out a folder. The program that trained you was shut down 8 years ago following an internal review. Most of the leadership faced prosecution. The participants were supposed to receive counseling and support for reintegration. I never received any of that. We know you fell through the cracks. Or more likely, someone deliberately failed to account for you in the official records to avoid scrutiny. She paused. That was their mistake, not yours. Captain Reeves leaned forward. However, your decision to falsify enlistment documents and conceal your background still constitutes a serious offense. Under normal circumstances, you'd face court-martial and likely imprisonment. I understand, sir. But these aren't normal circumstances. He glanced at Hammond. Your actions over the past month, saving Alpha Team, defending this base against overwhelming odds, have demonstrated conclusively that your loyalties lie with the United States military and the soldiers you serve alongside. You've proven yourself in the most fundamental way possible. Hammond took over. Which brings us to the decision. You have two options. Option 1. You accept a general discharge under other than honorable conditions. Your service record will be sealed. You'll be required to undergo monitoring for 2 years, but you'll be free to pursue civilian life without legal prosecution. Lena felt her heart sink. Discharge. The end of the one place she'd found purpose. Option 2, Hammond continued. You accept a full pardon for the identity fraud in exchange for complete transparency going forward. Your enlistment will be retroactively corrected to reflect your true identity and background. You'll be reassigned to a specialized unit that can properly utilize your capabilities. And you'll work with our organization to help identify and shut down any remaining programs similar to the one that trained you. The words took a moment to process. A pardon, Lena repeated. You'd be the first foreign-born operator with your particular skill set to receive official sanction, Reeves said. It's unprecedented, but so are you. What's the catch? Hammond smiled slightly. The catch is that you stop hiding. You stop pretending to be average. You stop holding back. We need what you are, Ms. Volkov, not what you've been pretending to be. And if I choose option 1, then you walk away and we lose one of the most effective operators we've ever encountered. Harding spoke for the first time. And personally, I think that would be a waste. Lena looked at each of them in turn. At Reeves, representing an organization that wanted to use her. At Hammond, offering a legitimacy she'd never thought possible. At Harding, who'd chosen to trust her when he had every reason not to. I need time to think. You have 24 hours, Hammond said. After that, we need an answer. They dismissed her. Lena walked out into the bright desert afternoon, mind spinning. A pardon, official recognition, a chance to be herself without hiding. But at what cost? Being assigned to some specialized unit meant more scrutiny, more expectations, more chances for the people who'd created her to find her again. It meant acknowledging that she was a weapon, not a soldier, a tool to be deployed, not a person with agency. She found herself walking toward the perimeter, toward the familiar emptiness of the desert. But this time, she wasn't alone. Maddox was sitting on the same rock outcropping where she'd spoken with Harding weeks ago. He looked up as she approached. Heard you had visitors. Word travels fast. Always does. He patted the rock beside him. Want to talk about it? Lena sat, staring out at the endless sand. They offered me a choice. Discharge or pardon. That's good, right? Better than prison. Is it? She picked up a small stone, turned it over in her fingers. The pardon comes with strings, reassignment, full transparency. Working with intelligence agencies to hunt down other programs like the one that made me. Sounds like they want to use you. They do. That's the problem. She threw the stone, watched it arc through the air. For 4 years I've been trying to be normal, to be just another soldier, to prove that I'm more than what they made me. And now they're saying that was wrong, that I should embrace being a weapon. Maddox was quiet for a moment. You remember what I said that first day, after the compound? You said a lot of things. I said you didn't just cover us. You saved us. He looked at her. I've been thinking about that. About the difference between those two things. Covering fire is tactical. It's part of the mission. But saving people, that's personal. That's choosing to put yourself on the line because you care what happens to them. What's your point? My point is that you're not just a weapon. Weapons don't choose. They don't care. They don't refuse orders because they think there's a better way. He stood, brushed off his uniform. You've been so focused on not being what they made you that you haven't noticed what you actually became. Someone who fights for the people around her, someone who makes the hard calls when it matters. Someone who saves lives not because she's programmed to, but because she decided that's what she wants to do. The words hit harder than Lena expected. The pardon scares you because you think it means going back to being their tool, Maddox continued. But it doesn't have to. You can take their offer and still be yourself. You can use their resources to hunt down the bastards who hurt you. You can make sure no one else goes through what you did. That's not being a weapon. That's being a soldier with a purpose. He walked away, leaving her alone with her thoughts. Lena sat there as the sun began to set, watching the sky transform into fire and shadow. Maddox was right. She'd been so afraid of being used that she'd denied what she actually wanted. To matter. To make a difference. To use the skills she'd been given, no matter how they'd been acquired, for something that counted. She stood and walked back to base. 24 hours later, Lena stood in Harding's office again, facing the same panel. "I've made my decision," she said without preamble. "I accept the pardon. I'll work with your organization. I'll help shut down programs like the one that trained me. And I'll do it as myself, not as Lena Voss pretending to be normal, but as Elena Volkov trying to make things right." Hammond smiled. "Excellent. We'll begin the paperwork immediately. You'll be reassigned within the month." "One condition," Lena added. The smile faded. "You're not in a position to negotiate." "One condition," Lena repeated firmly. "I want regular rotations back to frontline units. I don't care what specialized work you have me doing, training, operations, investigation. But I'm not spending my entire career in the shadows. I need to stay connected to actual soldiers, to people who fight for reasons that matter." Hammond exchanged a look with Reeves. "That's unconventional," Reeves said. "So am I. That's why you want me." A long pause. Then Hammond nodded. "Agreed. You'll maintain affiliation with conventional units while conducting specialized work. Quarterly rotations at minimum." "Then we have a deal." They shook hands. Official, binding, the beginning of something new. After the others left, Harding gestured for Lena to stay. "You did good," he said simply. "Thank you, sir. I meant what I said before, about protecting my people. You're one of mine now, officially and permanently. If anyone gives you trouble about your background, about what you are, you send them to me. I appreciate that, sir. Don't appreciate it. Earn it. Keep being the soldier I've seen these past weeks. Keep fighting for the right reasons. Keep saving lives." He extended his hand. "And maybe, eventually, forgive yourself for the ones you took." The words lodged in Lena's chest like shrapnel. She shook his hand and left. Whooped. Her final week at Forward Operating Base Sentinel passed quickly. New orders arrived. New assignments. The machinery of military bureaucracy grinding forward, transforming her from liability to asset with nothing more than official signatures and sealed files. Alpha Team threw her a send-off in the mess hall. Unofficial, unauthorized, and entirely welcome. They'd somehow acquired actual beer despite regulations, and they insisted she drink with them. "To Voss!" Banks raised his bottle. "The scariest person I've ever been grateful for." They laughed, drank, told stories. Hayes cornered her near the end of the night. "So where are they sending you?" "Classified." "Of course it is," he grinned. "You gonna miss us?" Lena considered the question seriously. "Yeah, I think I will." "Good. Means you're still human." He clinked his bottle against hers. "Don't let them turn you back into a machine, Voss, or Volkov, or whoever you end up being." "I'll try." Ortiz was last to approach, medical kit still hanging from his shoulder like it was part of his uniform. "Got you something." He handed her a small patch, custom made, showing a sniper scope with the words Guardian Overwatch stitched around it. "It's not official," he said, "but we thought you should have something to remember us by. Remember why you do what you do." Lena stared at the patch, feeling something crack inside her chest. "Thank you. We're the ones who should be thanking you." He pulled her into a brief hug. "You saved our lives, all of us. That's not something we forget." Maddox found her on the north wall one last time, the night before her departure. "You ready?" "As ready as I'll ever be." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge. "You know," Maddox said eventually, "I've been thinking about what makes someone a good soldier. It's not just skill, not just courage. It's knowing when to follow orders and when to do what's right, even if it contradicts those orders. That's a dangerous philosophy. Maybe, but it's the truth. He looked at her. You've got that instinct, that ability to see what needs to be done and do it regardless of the cost. That's rare. That's valuable. Don't let anyone take that away from you. I won't. Good. He offered his hand. It's been an honor serving with you, Sergeant Volkov. She shook it firmly. The honor was mine, Sergeant Maddox. The next morning, Lena packed her gear, cleared her barracks, and walked toward the waiting transport helicopter. A small crowd had gathered to see her off. Not the whole base, but enough. Soldiers she'd fought beside. People she'd saved. People who'd seen her at her worst and chosen to see her at her best anyway. Harding stood at the front of the group, arms crossed, expression stern, but eyes warm. Safe travels, Sergeant. Make us proud. I'll do my best, sir. That's all anyone can ask. She climbed into the helicopter. The rotors spun up, wind whipping across the tarmac. Through the open door, she watched the base shrink below her. The walls they'd defended together, the buildings they'd rebuilt, the scars of battle slowly fading under fresh construction. But not forgotten. Never forgotten. 6 months later, Lena sat in a nondescript office building in Washington, D.C., reviewing files on a program that had operated in Eastern Europe under 5 different cover names. The work was tedious, detailed, and exactly what she'd signed up for. Across from her, a young woman, maybe 19, sat nervously, hands clasped tight in her lap. You said you could help me, the girl said quietly. You said there were others like me. Lena set down the file and looked at her. Really looked. Saw the fear, the confusion, the desperate hope of someone who'd been told they were special, been promised they could be more, and was only now realizing what that promise actually meant. She'd been that girl once, scared, alone, convinced she had no choice. There are others, Lena confirmed. And yes, I can help you. But first, I need to know, do you want out? Really want out? Because the people who recruited you won't let you go easily. They'll tell you that you owe them, that you signed contracts, that you're too valuable to waste. The girl nodded, tears forming. I just want to be normal. Normal's overrated, Lena said gently. What you want is to be free. Free to choose your own path. Free to use what they taught you for purposes you believe in. That's different. Can I do that? You can, but it's hard. And it means facing what you are, not running from it. Lena leaned forward. I'm not going to lie to you. You'll always be different. The training doesn't go away. The capabilities don't fade. But you get to decide what to do with them. That's the freedom that matters. The girl wiped her eyes. What did you do? I ran for a while. Then I stood and fought. Then I found people worth protecting. Lena pulled out a card with a phone number. This is a direct line. You call it any time, day or night, and I'll answer. You're not alone in this. Not anymore. The girl took the card like it was a lifeline. After she left, Hammond appeared in the doorway. That's the 4th one this month you've brought in. They deserve a choice. I didn't get one. You're giving them more than a choice. You're giving them hope. Hammond sat down. The program in Belarus is collapsing. They're scrambling to hide evidence. 3 more facilities have been identified in Southeast Asia. Your intelligence has been invaluable. Good. We're winning, Elena. Because of you. Lena didn't respond. Winning felt like the wrong word. You didn't win against organizations that turned children into weapons. You just stopped them from making more. Her phone buzzed. A message from Maddox. Alpha team deployed again. Wish you were here. Stay safe. She smiled and typed back, watch your 6, I'm watching mine. 3 months later, Lena found herself back in a combat zone. Not permanently, but for the quarterly rotation she'd negotiated. A different base, a different unit, but the same purpose. She provided overwatch for a convoy moving through hostile territory. Watched through her scope as the vehicles navigated narrow roads, potential ambush sites everywhere. Her radio crackled. Overwatch, this is convoy lead. We're approaching checkpoint Delta. Any movement? Lena scanned the ridgelines, the buildings, the shadows. Negative, convoy lead. You're clear. Copy that. Thanks for keeping us safe. That's the job, she said quietly. And it was. Not the violence, not the killing, not the impossible shots or the superhuman capabilities. The job was keeping people alive, watching over them when they couldn't watch over themselves, standing in the gap between survival and disaster. That was what she'd chosen. Not because she'd been programmed, not because she'd been trained, but because she'd decided it mattered. The convoy passed through the checkpoint safely. Lena watched them disappear into the distance, then packed up her position and moved to the next overwatch point. She thought about the girl in Washington, about the programs they were dismantling, about Maddox and Alpha Team and everyone she'd fought beside, about the truth she'd finally stopped running from. She wasn't just a weapon, she was a guardian, a protector, someone who'd been broken and rebuilt and had chosen, really chosen, to use that brokenness to shield others from harm. The conditioning hadn't given her that. The training hadn't installed it. It had emerged from something deeper, something human. The choice to matter. The choice to protect. The choice to stand when running would be easier. And that choice, renewed every day in 1,000 small ways, was what made her more than what they'd tried to make her. It made her herself. Years passed. Missions came and went. The work continued, dismantling shadow programs, helping their victims, protecting soldiers who never knew she was watching. Lena Volkov, the girl who'd been turned into a weapon and told she had no choice, had found her purpose not in the skills she'd been given, but in the decision of how to use them. She stood on battlefields and in briefing rooms, in the shadows and in the light, always watching, always ready, always choosing to be the person between disaster and the people who deserved protection. Some called her a hero. She never believed it. Heroes were people who overcame fear to do the right thing. She'd had the fear removed, the doubt erased, the hesitation eliminated. What she had instead was choice, the simple, powerful choice to use what she was for something that mattered. And in the end, that was enough. Because the truest measure of strength isn't the absence of fear, it's the presence of purpose. Not what you can do, but what you choose to do with it. Not the power you possess, but the people you protect with it. Lena had learned that lesson the hard way, through blood and bullets and the long road from weapon to warrior to guardian. And she carried it with her every day, in every mission, in every moment when someone's life hung in the balance, and she had the choice to look away or to act. She always chose to act, because that's what it meant to be human. The strongest people aren't those without fear or doubt. They're the ones who feel everything and choose to fight for others anyway.